Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Conrad. How you doing? I was out with Ron Simmons and Mr. Gerald Briscoe this past weekend in Indianapolis, big TNA pay-per-view. I know it just went on, but had a great time with some guys this weekend.
Hey, tell me about it. You were at the Squared Circle Expo, right? They always do a great job, don't they?
They do a great job. A ton of wrestlers, maybe too many, but unbelievable how many people were there. And people come in from all over it's really well run. Fun time. They take good care of us, pick you up at the airport. I mean, they treat you, like a freaking celebrity. So it's really nice. It's fun to be there.
Shout out to those guys. I know they've been working hard on that. I know they got some traction. Looking forward to the next Squared Circle.
And I sat by Dave Silva's hero and favorite person, Tito Santana.
All right. Friend of the
Arriba!
show.
Arriba!
What, you got any good Tito stories? You were in WWE a long time when he was there. Surely you got a good Tito story, don't you?
Of course I do. The best one ever. Tito didn't speak much Spanish, and they put him at Spanish commentary.
Wait, that's a problem, isn't it?
Yes. So Hugo, the guy was I can't even pronounce his last name. Good
Hugo, as I call him, son of a bitch.
Hugo, son of a bitch, Hugo, son of a bitch, was doing the commentary with him, I believe. And so Hugo goes to Vince and goes, Vince, he's not fluent in Spanish. And Vince goes, he'll be all right. No, he doesn't speak the language he's doing commentary in. You got to hear the people he did it for about a year. And they kept going to Vince, he doesn't speak Spanish. He just says Arriba a bunch. And it's for Spanish language television. So it's very noticeable. If you're doing it for American television and he's doing Spanish, you wouldn't notice it. But when you're doing it for Spanish television, it's incredibly noticeable. So he did it for about a year. It's one of the biggest ribs in WWE history. I don't think it was a rib, though. I think Vince loved Tito. He wanted him to do commentary. I guess he thought he would learn the language. And so he put him on commentary, and Tito didn't learn the language.
As a reminder, Hugo Savinovich is a commentary legend. He might be like the JR for Lucha Libre, don't you think?
He's fantastic. Absolutely. You got to get him on to have him tell the story by working with Tito. You would tee him up, and Tito would learn a few phrases and a few words, but try to get them, interject them. But when a match is all over the place, it's kind of hard to do with scripted commentary.
He's a fun follow. Find him on social media. He has been the voice of AAA for several years. We're going to talk about all the nudes and notes this week. We do have notes to talk about Vader. Hell, we've been trying to do that show for weeks, but big stuff keeps happening, including a little clip that posted this morning that's got everybody chirping with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff. I thought I'd let you take a look.
Why so serious? Because you know who I am. But you don't know why he's here. This is so badass. You people know who we are. You have no idea what we're about. We're back, Monster. We are so back. Just so better than before. It is so good to see you again, my brother. Oh, it's been too long. I love you the most. No, I love you the most. You are my favorite of all favorites. But we ran so hard. We changed the world one time. But now, we're here to wake them up. We're here to slice and dice the world of wrestling. And you're not going to know what hit you.
We've changed the world of professional wrestling.
You can beat anybody.
That's a given.
Anybody.
It's going to rock your world. Hey, should we tell him? Should we tell him who our third man is? Should we talk about his credentials? Should we talk about all of his championships? Should we talk about the world-class athletes that he has brought to the very top of this one? Should we talk about that? No. Not yet. But do stay tuned, because when we do announce our third man, it's going to rock your world.
Oh, he's a badass, too. He's a real badass.
We're back. We're better than ever. And you can't wait to see.
And we're coming to get you. I think they're all coming back to our side.
I know it. I can feel it. I can smell it. I can see it.
So very heavy NWO inspiration here. Everybody's talking about this, John. People have been peppering me all day. Are you the third man? Is it a podcast? It's just a podcast. It's not a podcast, guys. And if it is, it's not with me. What do you make of this teaser? This is a hell of a hook to set, is it not, John?
That's the first time I saw it. Holy shit.
What'd you think?
That is awesome. Freaking awesome. I mean, you got to think about what Hogan has done and what Bischoff has done. You know, Hogan was, I think, probably maybe the greatest draw of all time. You know, I don't know. You can argue Steve, you can argue Londos, you can argue Rock, you can argue different guys, but he's in that conversation. Certainly, he was the foundation of WrestleMania when they first started WrestleMania 1 through 6, and then he has one of the biggest parts, the biggest angle in wrestling history, arguably. Again, you know, you can argue Mr. McMahon as well in that same conversation. Hogan's back. He's doing something else. And Bischoff is the one that everybody thought WCW was dead. And then this young guy who was a third announcer all of a sudden brings the company from on the brink of being just canned to making a ton of freaking tens of millions of dollars. And put these two guys together again back, and they've got something that's huge, especially as big as wrestling is right now. Because who knows what it could be. You got some money from the Middle East. You got some money from somewhere. You're buying a company that's already existing. You're starting up a new company that has not existed before. They have all the connections. They got the TV connections. They got the name recognition. They've got the brains. Two brilliant guys. This is awesome. I am so excited. I wish I was the third person. I'm not, but damn do I wish I was. Holy shit, I'd be the seventh person if they ask. You have the third person, fourth person, fifth person. By the sixth person, you're kind of getting worn out. I'll be the seventh. I'll be like the Virgil of the new whatever it is, like the NWO.
Well, let me just say, John, what are you doing Thursday?
Thursday. Is it Thursday a big day?
I might be paying attention to media on Thursday. Maybe.
Really?
Hypothetically.
So you're in the know. You are in the know. There's no doubt about it. You are in the know.
Yeah, I'm in the know, but I'm not. I mean, I was.
Damn it! Thing. I should have asked you about this before we went on air.
I was kind of surprised you didn't, and I was like, "Well, shit, maybe he's talking."
I haven't seen it. So the first time I saw it was just now. I've been busy working all day doing stuff.
When Eric sent that to me over the weekend, I said, "Dude," he said, "Call me when you watch it and tell me what you think." I thought it was awesome. I was like, "Dude, if you were going for intrigue and to set the hook and." You wanted that NWO vibe. You checked all the boxes. And I mean, everybody's spun up on it. And there's lots of different theories. People are saying The Rock's the third man. People are saying Vince McMahon's the third man. People are saying it's a new wrestling company, like you said. Others are saying, oh no, it's a podcast. And I've been tagged no less than 1,000 times with people saying that, oh, Conrad's the third man. I am not the third man. And I don't think it's podcast related. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe there is a podcast involved at some point, but let's just say this. It's big. It's real big.
That's awesome. What an incredible promo. I mean, two of the greatest minds and characters in wrestling history have come together to do something. That's pretty freaking cool. And the timing of it is impeccable. You couldn't have done this 2 weeks ago. We'd have got lost. You do it after WrestleMania. That's when everybody's new season starts. So everybody's starting over. You know, I don't care what company you're with. Everybody's starting over now because you got a clean slate because WWE's starting over. Now you've got this time where the media is not as wrapped up in one big show. It's perfect timing to do this. And obviously they know that. But I love it. I am so excited about this. That's one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time.
Well, I'll be sure to pass it along to Eric because he's on cloud 9, and I can't wait.
Where do I apply? That's all I need to know. I just need to know where I've never had a resume, but I may send one in.
Hey, click on the private tab in our chat right here, and I'll tell you who all is involved.
Okay, I think I'm on the private.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much resume except for delivering some warrants one time to a bunch of guys who pulled guns on me. That's about it, which I told you about before we got started. But
So I'm typing some things in there so you can see. Don't say any of that out loud, of course. Is that going to be big or what?
God. Oh my God. Oh my God. That is brilliant. And those guys are the right guys.
Yeah, I think so. And needless to say, it's not exactly what everybody thinks.
No,
but
I can tell you
it's bigger.
I can tell you from looking at it, it's not what nobody will suspect this. No, they will not suspect this. But this could change everything. This could change an entire sport into something that is very lucrative.
Everyone in the sports entertainment world is going to be paying attention. And, well, Eric and Hogan, they're going to take the internet and put it in their back pocket this Thursday, I think. So,
and boy, the three people you sent me were, oh, good Lord. That's good.
I mean, just the first one alone.
Yeah.
Is
and the third one. I love the third one. I love
both.
I love that guy. Yes. I've never met him, I don't think. But that I love that guy.
Well, let me just say you're about to.
Yes, sir. Because I'm gonna be the sixth man. I'm gonna apply.
I love it. Well, there's no bad spot there. Hey, I do want to address some bad news right at the top of the show, and then we'll get back to some fun stuff. So since you and I have recorded, John, we lost an absolute legend in his field. The late, great Steve Mongo McMichael passed away. He had been in a long fight, and finally he's at peace. No more pain, no more struggle. I'm so thankful that we were able to host him at the very first StarCast. So thankful that we were able to help raise money for him a few years ago in Chicago as a part of ad-free shows. We called it Money for Mongo. And most of all, I'm thankful that he was able to finally take his place in the NFL Hall of Fame, and he lived to see it.
Yeah.
And now I'm glad that he's no longer in pain. But, man, what a dude. And I know that it's been in fashion at times to sort of be critical of his in-ring career, and I know that was a thing online. But I just want to remind everybody, my dude was trained for one match. He practiced and got ready and did reps for exactly one match, and then wrestled the rest of his career based on that one match's worth of training. They just put him on the road after that. I mean, think about that. If you had one match and then, oh, no, you're a television wrestler. But somehow he made it work. He had enough charisma. He had enough credibility. He was just a badass, a dude in every way. I'm sure you at least got to see him a little bit here and there, and I know you had to follow his football career. Give us your thoughts on Steve Mongo McMichael.
I'm a huge fan of Mongo, and not just, and I'll get to a little bit about his wrestling and his football, but not just the way he lived, but the way he died. You know, he died like a legend, man. I mean, you know, he was in a horrible situation. I don't know if he was in pain or not, but he couldn't move. Apparently his brain was still there, which had to be terrible to be trapped into a body that was useless, you know, for so long of his life. But he lived it like a legend, man. I mean, he never, always upbeat. He always encouraged other people. He always talked about how grateful he was. I mean, it'd be easy to get bitter and not be that way. But man, he died like a legend, just like he lived, which is kind of what you expect when you have these heroes like Mongo. And Mongo is a hero. I mean, he was an incredible football player. And I thought he was good at wrestling. You know, some of these guys get trained 5-6 years now, and they never have a match. He got trained for one match and had 5 or 6 years. It's a completely different dynamic. You know, as one of them obviously would be wrong. Of course, when you got Mongo, it's pretty easy to do stuff like that. But there's a guy that nobody says anything bad about, and that's pretty cool. And all the way through his life, all the way up to the very end, that man lived like a legend. That was a life well lived, and proud to have been around during his era.
I thought the world of Mongo. I got to meet him a few times. We had him on Flair's podcast. We had him at some events. He had the greatest one-liners, just a natural charisma. I just thought he was hilarious.
When he got on Angel Hernandez up at Chicago at Wrigley Field, that was one of the greatest things ever. It was so freaking good. Angel was so mad. That guy's a dick. You know, he's just the shittiest umpire to ever. I don't know how they kept him all those years. But when Mongo went after him, that's just a legendary outtake right there. That's what you expect out of a guy like Mongo. And when you get it, you're going, everything I thought he was, he just lived up to. That was pretty cool.
Big football fan on Twitter at ZEE8552 tweeted out the day he passed away. I was at a Bears event as a kid and I yelled at Steve McMichael, "Screw the Packers." He came over to me and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Son, you shouldn't use that language. It's fuck the Packers." I don't know why, but that tickles me to no end. Shout out to Mongo and his.
Those were just men. I mean, the monsters of Midway, those guys were just men. And that's how you play football. Look, these guys today, wonderful athletes, but man, when you just have a group of guys like that, I don't care what generation. Ray Lewis's group was like that in Baltimore, later. But man, those guys were just men among boys, and that's in the NFL where they're all men. That was an impressive team.
I want to mention too, a few years back, we did a whole host of legends. We brought them all together for what we called Money for Mongo. And I mean, Jeff Jarrett, Ric Flair, Eric Bischoff, Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, even Mick Foley. They were all there in Chicago, Illinois to help celebrate Steve's career and legacy, and obviously to try to raise money for the McMichael family. Well, we've put together a quick compilation of that event with some of the best and funniest Mongo stories. It's available now at our new Podcast Heat channel, and we've got a link for that in the description for today's show. So when we finish up, if you want to go hear more Mongo stories, we've got it linked. Let's keep that positivity going. I'm sure his family is going to continue to, be checking in online and seeing what people are saying. Share some of your favorite Mongo stories on social and let the family know that he may be gone, but he's not forgotten. Speaking of somebody who's not forgotten, believe it or not, it's been 20 years today since we lost Chris Candido, John. And I know that when you were first working with the WWF, he was there. And obviously anybody who ever met him had a lot of admiration for his work in the ring, one of the all-time greats, bell to bell. And certainly, paired with his fiance, I guess, at the time, Sonny, they were one of the hottest acts on the independents before they even got to WWE.
Yep.
Did you spend any time in the ring with Candido?
Not much in the ring. I think I wrestled with him and Tom when they were together at Zip and whatever they were, Zip and Dip or whatever.
Zip and Skip. Yeah, the
Zip and Skip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think. I thought the gimmick was good. The name, you do what you deal with the hand dealt, and but I thought they were a good team. Tom's a great worker, and Candido's a very good worker. Candido was excellent in the ring. And I thought they could have done much more with it. Sonny ended up getting a lot of heat, and that got residual heat on the boys. She always just had a way of getting in hot water with somebody. We were in we were like Hyannis, Massachusetts or somewhere. We used to run those tent towns during the day, and we'd run those like 2 or 3 tent towns in Hyannis and the Cape Cod top area. And Paul Bearer comes in, and there was a broom. We're all dressing outside, and there was a broom there, and he picked it up, and he told Candido, said, "Hey, I've got Sonny's trends." And Candido threw a chair up in a tree and wanted to fight Paul Bearer. And I said, "I really don't think that's a good idea. You're going to win, but I really don't think it's going to be a real mark of a merit badge you're going to get for that."
I don't know how to transition into a first commercial here. So instead, I'll hit a comment here. Nick Sparta says JBL should beat up Conrad. Hey, do we have heat, brother? Am I going to catch a clothesline from hell? Are you trying to know a false sense of security?
But I know if we have no heat. Now that Mr. Dr. Sir Stud Muffin, Dave Silva, we might have heat over a lot of things, especially when he set the airport on fire in San Antonio when I was down there. But no, me, Conrad, you and I have no heat. Me and Dave Silva, good chance we have a lot of heat.
Hey, so we've got JBL here live. If you guys are wanting to chime in and ask some questions, we're ready for them. Mick Mac says, "Good morning from Australia, JBL." How about that, Mick Mac?
Good morning. He put out some incredible stuff on Twitter. I guess X is the correct phrase now, but put out some great stuff with some great videos that he finds. I don't know where he finds them, but it's incredibly entertaining. It's very fun. So I love Mick Mac. He does a wonderful job. And by the way, I don't know if I showed you this last time, but I've got a little leprechaun doll here. I don't know if you can see this.
Wait, are you training with that thing?
I am. Yeah, I'm throwing trash cans at it. So I've ordered a trash can, and I got this leprechaun, and I'm just going to put it in the yard and just beat the shit out of it in front of all the neighbors with trash cans.
I'm gonna be honest with you. That's creepy. Why did you buy that? Where does one buy? I don't want one, but where did you buy that?
Etsy.com, ETSY.com. I found a leopard. It took me forever. It took me about 4 weeks to get it, but I'm going up to Wisconsin in a couple weeks to see Hornswoggle. And so I thought I would train in the meantime. And I've ordered a trash can. And now I'm going to sit all day and just throw trash cans at my leprechaun.
So you're not like putting pins in that thing, hoping that Dylan starts limping or something.
You know what? I'd like to cut off its arm and see if like Dylan loses an arm. That'd be fun. That'd be funny if like I get up there and Dylan didn't have an arm. That would be so cool if I get up there like Dylan's like missing an arm. I cut it off. They worked.
Let me just listen. I know if this was Briscoe, I'd have to really double down on this and just verify, but I don't think I have to check behind you on this. I think you'll just tell the truth. In order for you to find that, did you actually Google where can I buy a leprechaun?
Yes, I did. I couldn't find one on Amazon. I actually had to order one on Etsy and .com. I don't even know what that is. I just first time I'd ever ordered on it. So I had to create an account, and it took me about 4 weeks to get the freaking leprechaun. And because I wanted like a full size one, it's like 3 foot tall. So it's actually
wait, what is a full size leprechaun? You're going too fast here.
Well, like Hornswoggle. Like this is a 3 foot leprechaun, so it's a foot taller than Hornswoggle. And so I had to get a full size one because I wanted a good target, to hit with my trash can. I want to, practice legitimately. I want to, because I want to, when I go up there, I want to hurt him.
Let's pretend for a minute. You've seen Bruce and I do live shows for a minute. We're live here at somethingwrestle.com. Why don't you hold that? Do you have that leprechaun name? Does it have a name yet?
No, it doesn't. It's just a leprechaun I got off Etsy. I mean, it's a Hornswoggle leprechaun replica, I guess.
Can we just call it Dylan?
We can call it Dylan, yes.
Okay.
I've got a suplex dummy in my garage that Mr. Briscoe set me up with that we call Bruce.
I love that. Yeah. People are saying it was 1-800-BUY a leprechaun. I thought it was Leprechauns Are Us. But do you think hypothetically you could hold Dylan in front of you and we could just talk to Dylan for a minute?
Oh, yeah, of course we could. I can hold Dylan however you want him. Yes, yeah.
I'm not saying you're a ventriloquist necessarily, but if he was directly in front of you, we wouldn't see your lips moving.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what is it you need?
So I'm just wondering if we could talk to Dylan here, because we're definitely talking to Dylan. Dylan, how do you feel about knowing that your great close personal friend John Layfield has purchased a tackling dummy fashioned after you and to prepare for garbage cans flying at your head, Dylan?
Well, he almost ruined me at WrestleMania. He threw a trash can at me in my one big spot when all my family was there. My normal size family was there, and he threw a damn trash can at me. But this damn leprechaun, that ain't me. I weigh a lot more than that. I weigh about 483 pounds, and that leprechaun doesn't look like it weighs over 52 pounds. Plus, it's way too damn tall. JBL's a jackass.
Hypothetically, listen, the rumor and innuendo is that leprechauns, well, occasionally they've been known to drink a beer or two, and maybe too many before TV. Occasionally, hypothetically, I don't know, maybe luggage carts were involved. If you're really going to be going nose to kneecap with John Layfield next month, are you at all concerned that your pre-gaming may actually backfire on you, Dylan?
Nope, I'm going to challenge JBL to a stepladder match. That's my strength. It's a stepladder match. I'm going to drink a bunch of beer. One time he found me in a handicapped bathroom. I was passed out on the bathroom seat. Now, I wasn't taking a dump or anything, or a leprechaun dump, or a little dump, as you might want to say, because you're trying to be funny. But I was just sitting there drinking beer from the APA, and they found me, and I had passed out in the middle of the day. I almost got in trouble with Bruce Pritchard.
Dove City is with us here live, and they have a question for you, Dylan. Are you able to take a question from our audience, Dylan?
Well, hell yeah. I'm a leprechaun. I ain't stupid.
Dove City wants to know, is it possible for Hornswoggle to have a quote-unquote big spot?
Hornswoggle ain't got a big nothing. I don't want to say nothing about my private area, but I ain't got a big nothing. Except big ass. I got more ass than a donkey farm. They told me to haul ass and take 4 trips.
Dylan, I know you've got a podcast now, Short Stories with Swoggle. Is there anything you'd like to say about your podcast, Short Stories with Swoggle, which is available anywhere you can enjoy podcasts?
Yeah, if you got a short attention span, you ought to check in with me because my stories don't make a lot of sense and I get lost all during them. I just make up some different stories. I just make up shit. Then I start drinking. Then I just start doing stuff. Then I just shut the podcast off because I get bored or I pass out.
Dylan, do you think we could get you to just make occasional appearances on the show moving forward?
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Listen,
yeah, I like Dave Silva. My hero's Tito Santana.
Oh, really? Your favorite wrestler is Tito Santana?
Favorite wrestler, Tito Santana. Arriba, arriba, arriba.
All right. Well, I don't know what to say, but thank you for stopping by, Dylan.
Thanks, Conrad. Love you. Hey, if you want to pick up my podcast, I've been texting you for quite some time about taking my podcast into your ad-free network, but you not returning any of my texts, and you just kind of ignore everything I send out. So I'm sure it just got lost, but I'll send you some more shit. I even sent you some certified mail. They said you answered it, but you never called me.
Just so I know, John, is Dylan sitting on your lap or is he standing on your knees right now?
No, he's standing. Thank God. Yeah. I'm not. I'm going to hit him with a trash can. I'm not going to bang him.
I wasn't sure what all you had planned.
You never know. He's a cute little leprechaun.
And he's all hopped up on Blue Chew. So
yes, he is.
Listen, I wanted to ask you about some other news and notes because, you're uniquely qualified to talk about some of this stuff. I don't know that you saw, but Bryan Danielson.
I just had a leprechaun you accused me of banging. I'm not sure that I'm uniquely qualified to do much of. Well, I might be. I don't know.
Now that I'm thinking, I really am sort of second guessing some of my life decisions here. As it's 5:30 on a Monday where I live, and
You're calling Bruce to get him back by 6.
He did get a text during that bit. I will say that. I hope he's having a good time in Aruba. Danielson had a great comment that I wanted to ask you about because I felt like this was a great answer. He was asked about whether or not he would wrestle again, and he said something like, "My neck is wrecked. So it's not no chance, but it's risk versus reward at this point, right? So I want to be able to live comfortably with my wife and kids. One of the things our society has a real problem with is realizing when enough is enough. And I'm very satisfied with my career, and I think enough is enough." Now, John, I don't think for a minute that we'll never see Danielson wrestle again. We've all got our opinions about wrestling retirements. However, I do think this is, based on what we're reading here, the end of him being a quote-unquote full-time wrestler. Now, granted, full-time today means something different than it did 5 years ago or certainly 15 years prior to that. But what do you think of that? Enough is enough, and not enough people know how to say that. Your response?
I think there's not a right answer, and there's not a wrong answer. If Daniel has given his heart and soul to wrestling, and he's wrestled probably a lot longer than he should have, probably more than any normal doctor would have told him to do. That's a tough dude and a smart dude. I love Daniel Bryan. I think he's just a wonderful human being. I think he's wonderful for the business. I hate that enough is enough, but I'm happy that he makes that choice and he feels comfortable with it because he has a family to go home to. And whether he did or didn't, there are options. But, I understand both sides. I understand why Michael Jordan would play with the Washington Wizards a couple years. Because once you're done, you're done. Jordan's making $300 million a year. He's in a different level than everybody else. He was then too, by the way. But once you're done, he can only play so much golf for money. He can only play so many cards for money. He loved basketball. That was his last couple of years. I have no problem with guys playing too long, with staying too long. Most guys are going to live a long time, and you're going to be retired an awful long time. I've told guys a lot. It's a toss-up that you have, especially when your health is at risk. That's a real debate, and there's not a right or wrong answer. But I can certainly understand both sides. I can understand Daniel Bryan saying enough's enough, and I'm very happy for him. Very happy. But I can also understand a guy saying, you know what? I want to wrestle a few more times. Because once you're done, understand there's risk of more injury. But also, you're going to be done for 40 or 50 years. Depends on how long you live. And you're not going to get back in it. That window is a finite window. So I understand guys doing both. And I have no problem with either one.
I agree. I just thought it was refreshing to hear a guy who was pretty honest and forthright in saying, I want to go out on my terms. And this is my decision. I don't feel like I'm being forced to or I have to. And I recognize when enough is enough. And, just being content with your career, that's something that a lot of people I don't think ever really achieve. And I know that there are guys who had their last match and didn't realize when they were doing it that it was their last match. And I'm not saying that this is indeed Bryan's last match, but if he's content, man, I think that's pretty cool.
I do too. And I was there at WrestleMania as King named it, and that was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that. That whole crowd. I remember in the production meeting that day, we had built that up for months. And, people talk about the WWE as burying Daniel Bryan. It's hard to bury a guy when he's on 5 different segments of Raw. He was every single night. And I knew what the payoff was 2 months before. I mean, that was one of the best buildups I've ever seen done with Daniel. Of course, you had Daniel. That's one of the reasons that you could do it. But I remember sitting there and I remember asking Kevin, I said, are we ready for the 80-something thousand people chanting yes? And Kevin Dunn, and Kevin said, he goes, John, we got it completely covered. He said, we've already thought about it. We know how wild it's going to be. We got all the different camera angles to make it look as big as it is. And he said, we're ready. And they were. And that was one of the most incredible moments I've ever been a part of, to see that many people chanting yes. That was so cool. I mean, if Daniel had gone out after that, he'd be fine.
Hunter Dobbs says, as a Danielson fan, I'm happy for him. I am too. I'm really happy for that.
And Daniel loves wrestling so much. And when we did the JBL and Cole show, we were just having fun, just doing silly stuff. Daniel would dress up as different stuff and go in there. He was fighting a bear. He kept kicking the bear in the balls. I think it was Hornswoggle was in the bear costume, but he was just doing stuff. And they were like, Daniel, you're in the main event. You don't need to be on the little YouTube show. He goes, no, I love it. He'd do stuff with Kane. He just enjoyed performing and being a character, and so I hate it for him because that's what he loves. But I love it for him that he's content to say, hey, enough's enough. And God bless him. I wish him all the most happiness in the world.
He also had another quote that I know is going to get everybody talking, and I wanted to share it with you. And I'm going to ask you a similar question with a little bit of a twist. He was asked who he would like to work for in wrestling if he could have any pick. Here's the exact tweet. Bryan Danielson was asked who he'd choose to run a wrestling company with: Tony Khan, Vince McMahon, Eric Bischoff, Triple H, or Dixie Carter. And Bryan said something like, this is my legitimate answer. People are going to assume that I work with AEW, so he's just saying that because it's his boss, but I would legitimately have Tony Khan. I think he's very in tune with what wrestling fans want, but he's also a good person. I'm not saying anything bad about anyone else, but I know he always tries to treat people with respect and kindness, no matter where they are on the roster. That's a nice quote, but the list is Tony Khan, Vince McMahon, Eric Bischoff, Triple H, and Dixie Carter. If you were going to work for someone besides Vince McMahon, because we know pretty much your entire career, the parts that we recognize with you here on the show a lot are under Vince McMahon's watch. So if you were going to pick someone else, I don't know that you've ever even met Tony Khan. Did you meet Dixie Carter?
I did. I had lunch with her one time in Nashville, not over wrestling. I was just there on business, and she was there. And just out of courtesy, I called her, said, hey, would love to meet you. And we talked a little bit about wrestling, but not about a job or anything, but had a wonderful, nice lunch with her. A terrific lady. Very, very nice. I was very impressed with her. Just what do you expect out of a great Southern lady? And I mean that as a compliment. I thought she was a true gentlewoman and a very, very nice person. So yes, I had a wonderful interaction with her, but no business talk with her.
I don't think
no business talk with her as far as, hey, do you want to come work for me? Anything. Right. We talked businesses, in 10,000 foot levels of different things that we talked a lot of business, but nothing with, solidifying a job.
Conversation about working together. Yeah. Have you met Tony Khan in person yet?
Yes. Apparently I met him one time, and I say apparently. I remember meeting him because I remember he came in with the Jaguars. And I shouldn't say apparently because I do remember meeting him. He came in with the Jaguars. We were like in Jacksonville or somewhere. And I don't remember if his dad was with him or if any other members of the Jaguars were there. But he was representing the Jaguars at the time. And so that's why I say I don't know if his dad was there. Not that you said, not that I'm throwing shade that his dad had to be there.
No. I don't think. I want to be clear. You're saying he came in. You mean to a WWE show?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, came into a WWE show, and we were doing. I think we're doing something in Jacksonville. I believe it was what it was. Yeah. And I met him. Very nice interaction, but nothing. Again, he hadn't started up to even talk of forming a wrestling company at that time.
Well, hypothetically, if you were forced, hey, would you want to work for Triple H, Eric Bischoff, Dixie Carter, or Tony Khan? Would you have a pick? I mean, I don't want you to answer Vince because everybody knows you worked with Vince. We're going to
Sure, and that's the easy answer, and that's who I would pick because I enjoyed working for him, and I saw what he did, from building through with the over the top network and everything he did. It's hard for me to answer in a fair way that's not biased because I've worked with Hunter and I've seen what Hunter has done.
Okay, let's take him off too then.
He was under the tutelage of Vince, and I think he's done tremendous stuff. And the scale of what Hunter's done, I think, is surpassed the others. Of course, he started with a higher scale too, but I think he's done a great job. So if we take away Hunter, then I think that's
you see your Tony.
Yeah, and man, I'm going with Eric. And not a doubt in my mind. Eric turned the company around that people thought could not be turned around. And he did a great job with it. And then a merger happened that pushed him out and pushed the company to the brink. I would love to have seen what he could have done if he could have found a way to extend the NWO for a couple of years, or if it would have fallen apart anyway. That's an answer we'll never know. But we know what he did, and that's taking a company losing a ton of money to making about $40 million a year, one of the biggest corporate turnarounds in history. And so anybody that's done that, I'll side with them. And I say that not knowing very much about Tony Khan or Dixie Carter as far as their business acumen, because I have not discussed business with them in that way that I have with Eric.
Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with Eric. You've drank beer with Eric, so that's an easy answer.
I've wrestled with Eric. That little son of a, he like side-eyed me one time. We're like in Arizona or something one time, and I see him like trying to, didn't really try to take me down, but you can see him just kind of feeling me out. I'm like, holy cow, we're going to end up in the floor.
Hunter Dobbs says TK all day. Aaron Pitts says Duval. Jeff the Space Wizard says that he's talking about the Tony subject. Dub City says no honest person has ever criticized TK as somehow being a mean person. He seems like a great dude. John says TK is lovely. I've heard. Aaron Pitts says Triple H seems like the fresh choice. Poppy says out of all of them, it would probably be TK for me. Locked on Wrestling says, I guess if I didn't want to work much, I would pick DK. Boy, I don't know why people like dunking on that. Like, are we not supposed to be advocating for the guys to have better deals? Like, that's not a bad thing, is it? Why is that criminal?
All my life, I've wanted to be that guy. Like people say, why has he got that deal? I want to be that guy. And I don't begrudge anybody who's that guy. So, no. Good Lord, no. If the people get that deal, congratulations.
Jeff the Space Wizard wants to know, what about Jerry Jarrett? Well, Jeff, I don't know if you've heard the news, but unfortunately he passed away a couple of years. So he would not be able to hire John to wrestle. Let's talk a little bit about the news from last Tuesday. You and I were live on Monday, and we broke down the good, the bad, and the ugly of WrestleMania. And a lot of people were disappointed in WrestleMania. That seems to be the narrative. I've seen independent people who aren't in the wrestling bubble, who have big YouTube followings, who did a whole recap of the weekend. And unfortunately, they rated WrestleMania a 4 out of 10. And it felt like the big thing he kept harping on was, when we win in the WWE world, there's a big Rock display. When John Cena turned heel, Rock was there with Travis Scott. And when Travis Scott kind of came out, we kind of assumed The Rock was still coming. That is the narrative that was out there. So a lot of people were saying, oh, The Rock ruined WrestleMania. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but that was the narrative that was out there. So then Rock goes on the Pat McAfee show. Did you see this last week, John?
I read some of the clips, yes.
So here's basically what he said. I was an advocate of that. Not turning Cody heel soon, but down the line, I like the idea of that. And this idea of way down the road, you give him a reason to turn, not based on titles, but it's his soul and what that means that affects generations. When we got to the Elimination Chamber, we were kicking ideas around, and Triple H said, what about John turning? I love it. And the next thing is, you've got to speak to John and see if he loves it. John loved the idea of turning, but there's this anchor here that I want to root it in. That's a real thing I've been experiencing the past 25 years. I knew then the best thing for the final boss is we've established this thing with Cody's soul, and I don't want to be involved in that. Let the final boss step back into the shadows. Let all the spotlight go to John and Cody, not make it about Cody's soul or John's soul. Let them do what they do. I called John and Cody after the Elimination Chamber, and I said, I think the final boss's work is done. We just pulled off the greatest angle in wrestling history. I'm always here if you need me. but it's best for the final boss to not be involved in that finish. What do you make of this response? It almost feels like, I don't know, is there some political gamesmanship going on in that, or am I getting in my head?
He's saying all the right things. And I don't, you have to read his mind and somehow read between the lines, which I don't know how you can do to dispute that. I've been in situations, where, you're former champion and you have two guys that are fighting for over a title or something. And I've nearly always opted. Now, Rock's a different level. So understand that, I'm not putting myself in the Rock's level, where I've always opted out or always tried to opt out of being away from the finish, where it didn't distract from what the two guys were doing for the championship, especially the guy that won the championship. Because you still got the guy you just beat out there. You don't want a bunch of extra stuff out there for people to watch. I've always opted out of being out there in big matches, culmination things of title changes that where I wouldn't be around. I was when we were at TNA. I was with Matt Cardona. I specifically got out of the arena because I wanted Joe Henry to be there on his own. I didn't want to be a distraction. Now, Rock's a different level, and he was a bigger part of that than what I was, that angle. But I've done a lot of stuff like that. What he's saying is all the right things. And the only way you can dispute it is to say, well, that's not what he really meant. And I don't know how you can say that. Maybe that's true, but you certainly can't prove that. All you can say is he said the right things, and I would say that that's a pretty selfless act.
I can't argue what he said. Like you said, we weren't there. We don't know. What Kevin Nash has added a little flavor to this, and I think Kevin maybe misspoke, but the narrative is out there that, well, Rock wasn't available because he was filming a movie for Martin Scorsese. Now, I don't think that filming has actually started yet. I do believe it is to come, but Kevin pointed out something pretty savvy. A few years ago, when The Rock wrestled at WrestleMania, he tore himself up pretty good, and it postponed a movie. And it cost tens of millions of dollars in rescheduling. And it was a giant hassle. And if you get a chance to work with Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese, and it's like from what I understand, like a Hawaiian mob boss, and that's the role that Rock's going to play. I'm not an actor, but I imagine it's those type of roles that you dream of as an actor. I mean, he's done all the big Avenger type stuff. He's done the superhero thing. So to now get some critical acclaim, I could see why that's a big deal. And I could also see if I was Mr. Scorsese, I would say, I'd prefer you not potentially tear some shit off the bone and us not be able to shoot you. That makes sense. Either way, though, Dave LaGreca, friend of the show from Busted Open Radio, he was not having it. And he had an absolute meltdown on Wednesday morning when discussing everything that Rock said on the Pat McAfee show on Tuesday. And The Rock felt the need to respond. And I couldn't believe this happened. But The Rock took to social media, and here's what he had to say, John. Hi, Dave. The business is a complete work. Always has been, always will be. Every aspect of it, every match, every interview. Please join me, Cody, Cena, Brian, and the rest of us for our creative discussion so you can expand on your perspective. Until then, stop ranting. It's not healthy, my friend. Enjoy the show. P.S. Tell Bubba I have Grand Marnier and Hush Puppies for all of us. I appreciate the shout out for Bubba at the end, but I don't know what to make of this. The business is a complete work, always has been, always will be, every aspect of it, every match, every interview. Let's just stop right there. Why would we say that? What's the upside to saying that, John?
It's the old call out is what it is. It's, when you want to, somebody's making a point that this is the oldest phrase in wrestling. It's a work. When people are trying to make too much sense out of something, sometimes it's a work. That's what that is. That's just an old saying in the wrestling business when you're trying to shut a guy up. It's a work, and I think that's where The Rock's coming from. What all did Dave LaGreca say? By the way, I have a lot of love for Dave LaGreca. I always call him a grumpy old bastard whenever I see him, and I mean that as a term of endearment, and he knows I do because I love him very much. What all did Dave say?
Well, he was absolutely melting down about how The Rock.
He does the best meltdowns, by the way. He's really good at it. I enjoy his meltdowns.
They're entertaining.
Yeah.
I just thought the idea that The Rock, who's on the board of TKO, coming out and saying, hey, it's all the work. It's almost like, How dare you get invested in the products we're selling? I can't believe you, who host a wrestling radio show, would have the audacity to put over, sell, respond, or acknowledge what we're doing in the it's like, don't you want guys like Dave LaGreca ranting?
100%. When I started, we didn't have anybody ranting about nothing.
Yeah,
we didn't have nobody. We got all these guys now. They get that show on Sirius that he and Bubba and Tommy do. That thing is unbelievable with ratings. It's unreal what they do. Those guys are, for one, they're all fantastic, smart guys. They can talk, but man, I think they help wrestling. I love what they do. And, Rock's more old school than me. He's third generation. So, but he sees it from a different level. He sees it from a corporate level. Triple H sees it from that too. And, people say there shouldn't be a veil at all there now. I still like the veil being there, but that's just me. But they're selling out arenas that I never dreamed of. So they're doing something right. But to me, I'm with you on this one, Conrad. I have a little bit of issue with that, but what their success that they're having is incredible. Maybe somehow that works. I don't know. I don't want to be so old school that I'm thinking that, I think I don't like it, but when it works, you may have to look at it and go, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if I am or not, but I do feel uncomfortable with stuff like that. But
well, follow me down this rabbit hole, because wrestling fans have decided there's more than meets the eye here. They're pointing to Triple H's 98-minute acceptance speech on the Hall of Fame night, where he thanked the guy who does his dry cleaning, the guy who cuts his grass, the guy who washes his truck, the guy who made his first pair of boots. He even gave a shout out from the stage to Eric Bischoff in the crowd. But not one time did he mention or thank The Rock. And then when you fast forward and you see this interview where he continued, as he's talking to Dave LaGreca on social, please join me, Cody, Cena, Bryan, and the rest of us for our creative discussion so you can expand your perspective. And it feels like there's a pretty glaring omission there when you're talking about creative. And I'm not talking about Ed Koskey, but he should have been listed. And I'm not talking about Bruce Pritchard, and he should have been listed. But Triple H isn't mentioned either. Now, considering that they just had Triple H do all the media going into this year's WrestleMania, it wasn't the main event. It was Triple H on Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show and on all these major media appearances. And we saw a reveal. Not only did he reveal WrestleMania to us, he being Triple H, we also saw the reveal of, not only him going into the Hall of Fame, but the little Unreal show, the trailer where, hey, we're going to bring you inside the writer's room. And I can't help but wonder, is this a false flag operation? Are we trying to make fans say, now that we're pulling back the curtain and we're telling you what's happening in the writer's room, if we're also going to have Rock go on and say, here's exactly what happened creatively, here's who I called and when, and I'm just not mentioning Triple H. I went from thinking, man, they must really hate each other too. Is this going to turn into a match? Because it feels like this is like the inception of booking. This is the inception of kayfabe to me. Like, we're doing a story about the story behind the story, and that's the real story. But, it's all a work. Because everything is a work. Every interview, everything Rock just said there. What do you make of this, John?
I think it's one of two things. I think, obviously you've got two huge alpha males that could be posturing for position. Yes. I think that certainly is reasonable, and it happens in every corporate boardroom in the world, not just America, but in the world. I think that's normal. That if that's what's happening, I have no idea if that's what's happening. They're saying the right things. You're seeing a couple of omissions there that seem suspicious, but also, Conrad, it could be the second. And I'm more down with you on the second than I am the first. That when it's the easiest time to work people is when you're shooting with them, because all of a sudden they feel like you're letting them on the inside. You're letting them all on the inside. Then you say something that just like, hey man, we got on the inside. They really don't like each other, and all of a sudden this is going to end up in this corporate war that culminates at maybe at Survivor Series or something. Who knows? And that'll be a shoot. So yeah, I think it could be. I think it could be the second one. I don't know that. I have no inside information, but it could just be two alpha males, posturing a little bit. It also could be that this is all some type of work, and if it is, it's magnificently done. Because if you're going to work this, Conrad, you got to base it upon how would you work it. You'd say everything's a work, everything's scripted, all that stuff like that. Then all of a sudden you realize there's a personal animosity here. I'm talking about the working personal animosity here between two people. That it's a work, and all of a sudden now people are saying making something out of this, and all of a sudden now you've got something down the road that you can put in the storyline and put in the ring. And by the way, the other thing that's not being mentioned, you've got the 17-time world champion out there. 17-time world champion against the young man. He's a young man to me. He's older, Cody Rhodes, who has drawn more money in the last year than probably anybody in history with all of the revenue and everything. I'm looking at inflation dollars. I get all that. Screw that. Selling all these freaking arenas. You don't need a lot of window dressing for those guys.
I totally agree. You don't need anything else than just Cody and Cena. Even on the screen grab of last year's dry erase board from the meeting last year, where they're talking about WrestleMania this year, they had Cody and Cena. And I guess the original plan was Cena was going to turn heel at the end of WrestleMania, and they pushed it forward for the Elimination Chamber. But even that interview last week with Rock, he said something on Pat McAfee's show like, I got a call from Ari Emanuel, who's been a great close personal friend of mine and my business partner for over 20 years. And he said, Rock, we need help moving tickets. And whatever he said after that, all I heard was, well, boy, he just buried the whole damn roster when he said that. And that's when I thought, this is a work. Because normally I just don't see how Rock would come out and say, oh, yeah, they were having trouble selling tickets, so they called me. I flew in, helicoptered in, sold it out, hanging from the rafters, biggest angle in history, and then I said, you guys got it from here. That feels like we're setting up an angle, John. It feels like it's leading to a match.
It feels like it to me, too. If you ask me why I got added to a card, and obviously I'm going to be talking half in character, half in shoot. You know,
that's right.
I will tell you every single time. That's why they had to sell some tickets. You know, they needed JBL there.
That's it. And when I said that to Jeff last week, he was almost incredulous, saying no, that he wasn't doing a wrestling promo. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, he knows.
That's exactly what I would say. Exactly. Yes. If I'm working, I don't know if they're working or not, but that's exactly what I would say.
Because here's why, and all due respect, only an asshole would say that if they weren't working. It's an asshole thing to say, which is why a heel would say it. But if you're just saying it not as a character, you are an asshole who just buried the whole roster. And when we hear The Rock talk about the young talent of today, he's almost never an asshole. Yeah. So it just feels like it's headed that direction. But if you remember, like 15 months ago, when they first did the whole WrestleMania Vegas announcement for last year's WrestleMania announcement, for what the main event was going to be. When they did it in Vegas, Super Bowl week, you recall, they rented the arena and the whole thing. Well, the following SmackDown is where Triple H came out and cut a work shoot promo talking about how, you know, it doesn't matter. He was trolling The Rock. And that makes me think it's going to lead to that. If these guys are having a real life pissing contest and it doesn't lead to a match, that's a horse of a different color. And that is what Vince Russo thinks. Go check it out. Paint Your Life. It's the real deal. Text Wrestle to 87204. Hey, let's talk about what your boy Vince Russo was talking about. And listen, I know that you're not necessarily best friends with Russo. Do you hate Jonathan Coachman too? How are you and Coach?
As far as I know, I think we're fine.
Okay, I like Coach.
If we're not, I would be surprised. As far as I know, Coach and I are friends. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, listen, just in case, that shoulder's warmed up, isn't it? Just in case.
That's right. Yeah, if Russo was dying of thirst, I'd give him peanut butter.
Whoa. Okay, yeah. Let's move on. Here's what Russo says. When you say, please join Cody, Cena, Bryan, and the rest of us for our creative discussions, so you're telling me right there Triple H has no creative decisions. Thank you very much, Rock. But here's what I want to point out. People won't understand this. You'll understand this, Coach. When you're in the business and your number is called and your time is up, you know it. You know it. It's no secret, Coach. You know it. You're planning for it. You're preparing. You know it. And what you just said there, Coach, if that is what is happening, is what we are saying, I got to tell you, it's a horrible spot for Triple H to be in. So Russo believes that perhaps, hey, maybe since Bryan is his right-hand man, talking about The Rock for $7 entertainment, If The Rock wanted to place Bryan in Triple H's seat, I guess in theory they could figure out how to make that happen. But why would you do that if you're enjoying so much success on the WWE side of things? Like, nobody says, man, business has never been better. We're at an all-time high. I think it's time for a change. Those words have never touched, right?
Yeah, this is the guy who put Viagra on a pole and had the reverse battle royal. So I think you got to set the table a little bit to see who this is that just said this. That there's not a lot of credibility there. Yeah, well, to me, I agree with what you just said, Conrad. With The Rock, you got this movie coming up with Martin Scorsese. Then you come back to sold out football stadiums when you get the chance to come back. That's a pretty good gig. I don't know what you want more, which I'm not saying that he does. I don't think he does. I mean, you can't get more. You've reached the top. Like people say, well, is that really all you can get? Yeah, that's about all you can get. You've done everything. You're actually at the top of everything right now. So I don't see it. I mean, maybe it's like I say, maybe two alpha males kind of, bashing egos a little bit. But as far as somebody throwing shade at the other one, it looks like a really orchestrated angle is what it looks like.
Especially since we're talking about the new writer's room show. Like I can't feel like that's by accident. When we're promoting that show is coming, and we're also promoting that, Triple H is saying we're going to give you a peek behind the curtain on that trailer. And then we see Rock go on a mainstream show like Pat McAfee and say, okay, here's everything that was going on behind the scenes. It feels like this is a way to have the inception of a kayfabe angle.
Right, I agree. And, people are going to take something I've said out of context, I guarantee you, in the last 15 minutes. But my main point is look, I've never seen anybody that I thought could take the place of Vince. I didn't think anybody could. The stuff that Vince does, I've been blown away by Hunter. I mean, I've watched him where he, very much like Vince. Vince would come up and say something to a talent would say something to Vince. Vince is talking to somebody else about something completely different. Then a talent comes up and talks to him about something. Vince would just change gears and compartmentalize. It's a rare trait. And Hunter has that. And I'd see Vince, he'd pause. And I would tell guys, when you get done, don't keep talking. Vince is going to pause for a minute. It's going to be uncomfortable. And then he's going to give you an answer. And I see Hunter almost do the same thing and come up with an answer that's just better than it gives you the answer that you wish you had come up with. It's the guy that asked the question in the room and goes, why didn't I ask that? Because that was the question you should ask. That's how good I think Hunter is. I don't know who in the world could do what he's done in WWE the last couple of years. I think business speaks for itself. I mean, it's a matter of, okay, we're going to judge you based upon success. You can't have much more success unless you sell out 4 arenas in one night.
I think I hope it's an angle. It feels like an angle, but people are going to have fun talking about it no matter what. Here we are. We're talking about it now. One other thing I wanted to talk about with you is the big weekend that we had for TNA. But before we do that, I want to mention some other news that came out since you and I clicked record. It's come out that Logan Paul offered Stone Cold Steve Austin $1 million to dress up in the Prime bottle when he came down the ring for WrestleMania. No surprise, I guess. Stone Cold said, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But look at the visual there at somethingtowrestle.com of what Silva created. I mean, it's unimaginable that would have happened. But I just want to throw it out there if Logan Paul can hear us. Hypothetically, John, next year at WrestleMania, would you come down to the ring in the Prime bottle for $1 million? Oh,
absolutely. I go for as little as $950. Yes. No doubt about it.
50 grand.
I'd knock 50 grand off because I'm not Stone Cold. But yeah, I'd come down for $950. Now, inflation next year might be over, depends on what happens with tariffs and inflations or anything that might happen. So it might be over $1 million, but $950 right now, I'd do it.
Hypothetically, could he get a discount if he had you do it at SummerSlam?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's going to be an easier trip. I think that's in Indianapolis, isn't it? Or is it?
I think this one's in New Jersey.
Oh, Jersey, that's an easier trip. That's a train trip. So, yeah, that's easy.
Do you want to go ahead and give a quote to Logan if he's listening now?
945.
945. Okay.
Yeah, plus trans, please, if you don't mind, in a hotel.
Anytime you say trans, I get excited.
Yeah, you never know.
I don't know where we're going here. Let's talk about the power rankings coming out from Ariel Helwani. John Layfield's dead, boys and girls. By the way, I want to remind you, John, we're live on YouTube.
Yes, we are.
Let's go to the power rankings from Ariel Helwani.
Well, I'm saying nothing.
He's got because here's the thing, out of context, what we sounded like something else. But John and I have had a discussion about wrestlers at these wrestling conventions and the way they play games about trans. And depending on how old you are, that's where the gimmicks start. And we're going to be, we've quoted some people who've already tried to run those hustles. I'm sure I'll quote other people later about that, but there's a whole methodology between guys who used to be on the main roster who've built up a bunch of points, and well, you can figure it out from there. But if you're not careful, somebody will take advantage of you on the trans. We were burying people before we clicked record because I've had some interesting conversations on the way to StarCast, and he did not expect me to reference it. So let's move on before people think we're talking about something else.
We were talking about banging leprechauns earlier, so you never know what might happen.
Well, let's look at the goddamn power rankings.
But it's not like that leprechauns weren't of age, though.
This might be the last Something to Wrestle, but we're going out with a bang.
Bruce is on speed dial right now from Dave's.
He doesn't even have cell service in Aruba. Let's show the fucking power rankings here. I want to ask you your opinion. This is from Ariel Helwani at Yahoo Sports. What I'm really interested in, I guess there's no arguing that John Cena sits atop the mountain as the 17-time world champion, given what we've seen happen with Seth Rollins aligning himself with Paul Heyman. That makes a lot of sense that he would be near the top. So does Jey Uso. We know Randy Orton is next to challenge. What I'm really curious about, though, is how Ariel moved Cody down to number 10. What do you make of this? And I know Ariel's a friend of the show, and obviously he's a big wrestling fan and a big MMA guy. What do you think is next for Cody? And do you agree with him being ranked 10th in the power rankings? That feels ridiculous to me.
Yeah, look at it as far as you would look at it from an MMA fight. I mean, if a guy pulled out a title belt and hit somebody over the head with it and beat them, and all of a sudden now they're the new UFC champion, I don't think you'd drop 9 spots down to 10. I don't think you would. I mean, we're picking on Ariel for a fictional top 10, which I love, but it's fun to do. That's why we're doing it. So I don't think you would go from 1 to 10 if somebody cheated in a UFC fight and beat you somehow, which is John Cena cheated with the title belt and beat Cody. I don't see how he goes down almost out of the top 10. I think that's a glaring mistake.
If you were booking, I think everybody paying attention right now probably feels like Cody is taking a well-deserved break. I mean, he's done all the heavy lifting ever since he came back from the pectoral tear. Every media, every appearance, every sponsor, every Make-A-Wish, every charitable thing, every speaking event, every house show, every live event, every TV. He's been at them. So to take a break for a little bit makes a lot of sense. We know in just a couple of weeks it's going to be Randy Orton versus John Cena. That's what we speculated last week just based on the location being in St. Louis. I do think that's great that will be probably the last time they hook up. Why not do it in Randy Orton's hometown? I love that. But when Cody comes back, let's assume he's going to be back in time for the June pay-per-view. And again, I haven't talked to Cody. I don't know the plans. I don't ask. That's not what friends do. But what would you do with Cody in June? Is there an opponent hanging out there or a story that you're like, he's got to come back and do that? Does that exist?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I don't know if it exists right now or not because I don't know the creative, but it's easy to make exist because it's literally you can make it out of thin air. This comes out with just a typical heel champion of saying, I'm not going to face him. I beat him, not going to face him. And then you have Cody have to work his way back up. It's one of the the oldest angles in the wrestling, where the guy deserves another match because he got cheated out of the championship. Everybody knows that, but the champion there holds enough sway over whatever that you say, I'm not going to face him right away. Like the mandatory rematch, as you always have in every fictional contract, championship contract, and you make him work his way back up. Put him out there against somebody. It makes no difference who. Top guy, middle guy, it doesn't matter. Just put him out there against somebody. Make him work his way back up based upon what John Cena is making him do, not what the company's making him do. He doesn't need to work his way back up. He deserves an automatic rematch. But I think it's good. He has been everywhere. Every single show, every single media event, everything. Give him a little time off. Let him come back and let Cena refuse to wrestle him. And I think that's how you bring it back into the picture.
Yeah, I mean, what's the old corny thing? Jim Cornette used to say, "How can I miss you if you don't go away?" Like, yeah, he's going to get a hero's welcome when he pops back up. So,
yeah. If I were Cody, I wouldn't even want to be on television right now.
That's right. So when he comes back, it's going to be a mega pop, and we're off to the races.
Yeah.
So somebody that I know you're at least very familiar with from spending some time around TNA, Joe Hendry. He was at WrestleMania. We talked about that last week, his match with Randy Orton. And Joe Hendry made an appearance on Busted Open last week, and he was asked about losing to Randy Orton. And here's what he had to say. Do you know what CM Punk told me? We had a great conversation afterwards, and CM Punk told me that's exactly how it should have gone. And had it gone any longer, I think it would have worked out worse for me. There's no shame in losing to a legend like Randy Orton. And I think people have come around to that. But Dave Meltzer was quick to point out, never in the history of ever has something like this happened, where you had a promotion's championship belt getting beaten like this. Technically, it did happen, though, 25 years ago to the day. I was surprised to see this, John, but if you go back to the year 2000, we saw Triple H, who was the WWF champion, beat Taz, who was the ECW champion, on SmackDown. And that happened on April 20th, 2000. And 25 years to the day later, Randy Orton beat the TNA world champion at WrestleMania. How about that coincidence? Isn't that wild?
You just hope that they had that in their back pocket. You don't know if they do or not, but you kind of hope they do, that somebody brought that up. That's a pretty cool stat. I saw that stat on social media. I thought that was awesome. And it's all about what you do next. Joe Hendry got a ton of exposure. He's very over. And I've said before, one of the most over guys out there that's on the, I guess you call it the independents, outside of WWE, whatever you want to call the wrestling organizations outside of WWE. I'm not sure if TNA would be considered independent or not, but whatever you want to characterize it. But he got a ton of publicity. He got a ton of exposure. Now it's up to him to make that into something. If you don't make it into anything, then no, it won't help you. If you do, then it will. He's been very good about what he's done and very good about manufacturing this image that has gotten really over with people. I mean, it's really resonated. He is, when you go to these TNA shows, he is really over. It's really impressive what he's done.
Let's talk a little bit about TNA. I don't know why this isn't discussed more, but they had one hell of a pay-per-view over the weekend. And if you missed it, you're missing some great stuff. I've heard a lot of people say this might be the best TNA pay-per-view of the year. I'm talking about TNA Rebellion 2025. It was at the Galen Center there in Los Angeles, California. You could have watched it on Triller, and man, they had something for everybody. Something I wanted to point out to you, though, happened in the Ultimate X match. I don't know that you had a chance to see it, but Moose is going to retain his X Division championship over El Hijo de Vikingo, who I know you've seen before down in AAA. Of course, he's, I guess,
awesome.
On the WWE banner
awesome
now.
Wrestler. That kid is fantastic.
Casey Navarro was also in the match, along with Leon Slater, Matt Cardona, and Sidney Akeem. But there was a spot that was absolute banana, where you had a talent climb to the very top of the poles on the side that they have to use for the Ultimate X. It was Leon Slater, and Ricky Morton was so disappointed in what he saw that he took to Twitter and quote tweeted the spot. He says, "I'm disappointed. Leon gave you his trust and body on the line for an amazing moment, and all of you dropped him. Thank God he walked away. In our business, trust is everything, and his trust may never be the same." But I mean, what a spectacular leap. And they slowed down the momentum a little bit, but he splatted on the canvas or on the mats around the ring there on the outside. I know that you didn't necessarily jump off the top of the Ultimate X very often in your career. I believe at different times you had to be the base, right?
Yeah.
Is there a best practice for being the base? Is this a party foul? Does Ricky not have all the information? How do you do something?
Yeah, a couple things. Yeah, I don't remember who the luchador was. Came up to WWE. He did a double backflip off the top rope, and they dropped him, and he damn near killed himself several years ago. It shortened his career. I can't think of who it was. You would know him. Came into WWE with a mask. Not very tall guy. Wonderful, wonderful human being. Great wrestler. He came back, but they could have killed him. There was no mat there. He had his head on the concrete. They didn't catch him. I mean, it could have killed him. Put him in the hospital. You have an obligation. Two things with this. One, this was a stupid move. Now I say, let me say, not a stupid move. Okay, I don't want to say that. It was a gutsy move, and it was a ballsy move, and I applaud him for doing this. But you can't just stand up there and have everybody together around, and it just all it is then a stunt. It's not part of the match. It's a stunt, and it's awesome. It's something I can't do. Something that I would be willing to catch, but you get up there, you've got to do, you got to get better at getting up there, and all of a sudden, like Eddie Guerrero did when he jumped off the cage on me, or you can pick your moment with Rikishi when he jumped off the cage. Not just throwing out the old school guys. Guys do it today right. I don't think this was done right, because when you get up there, it's all of a sudden like, hey, what am I going to do? I'm going to jump off of these guys. The crowd starts popping. You get up there and you're like gathering your feet, then everybody's getting together down there. You know what he's going to do. Now it just becomes a stunt. It's not part of the match. It's just, I'm going to jump off this cage because it's real dangerous, or the top of this thing because it's real dangerous, and they're going to try to catch me, and people are going to chant, holy shit. To me, I didn't think it was well done. That being said, I've caught 1 million people. I've never dropped anybody. I've stepped in front of people. I've stepped down. I've made sure that they landed on me. Always. I never, ever. Me and Ron caught a ton of people when they come over the top rope and all that stuff. Your obligation is down there. Their health is in your hands. Forget if the spot should have been done or should not have been done. I have no problem with the spot being done. I don't have a problem with the way the spot was set up is what I have a problem with. But him coming off, you catch him. His life is in your hands. And if your life was in his, you would want the same thing done for you. So, yeah, you got to step in the middle. It may be too far up for you to realistic, do something safe. Don't care. If you agree to do it and you're at the bottom of that catch, you've got to be there for that guy to land on you. No excuses whatsoever. And those guys look like almost a couple of olayed him. A couple tried to catch him with their arms. You can't do that. You've got to catch him with your body, and you got to let him hit you. It is a shot. I mean, I've been hit. I cannot tell you. I've been busted open. I'm hit very hard. I'm hit the head with legs and everything. Shit happens. That's what you got to do to protect somebody. And I thought that Ricky was right.
Sydney Akeem took to Twitter to say 2 things. I gave my body to catch Leon's insane dive. I didn't get out of the way. I stayed there and took it, but my knee was landed on, and it took me out in the process.
And that may be right. I don't want to throw shade at any of those guys. I just watched it briefly, and I gave my opinion. I don't want to throw shade on any of these guys. That may be exactly right what happened.
It's interesting, though, that we're all talking about it. So we're also talking about Sean Waltman. He showed up as a part of the 6-man tag match, a nice little unadvertised surprise. He lives in Los Angeles. I love seeing Sean in the ring, hitting a I think it was an X Factor on Alicia Edwards. That was fun.
Sean is awesome. I love Sean so much. Him and Kane were one of the most underrated tag teams of all time.
Yes.
They were so good together. I mean, Sean is such a smart guy. He used to hit you with that spin kick in the corner. You didn't have to put your hand up, nothing. These guys who just throw kicks at you 100 miles an hour where you got to put your hands up and block. It looks terrible. Guys that can work like Sean, who would throw that kick and he would just barely hit you on the jaw. Bill Irwin used to throw that double boot kick where he'd knock in real boots and just barely hit you with the top part of the boot. But you didn't have to put your hand up. It looked like it knocked you out. Sean had that ability. Sean was, and that's one of the things that's missing today. Guys are just throwing stuff at people's heads so hard that you got to block it with your hands, and it looks like you miss. But I think the world of Sean.
We should mention that one of the best matches of the night, and I think it was actually higher rated than all but the women's 3-way at WrestleMania, was Mike Santana and Mustafa Ali in a Falls Count Anywhere match. According to the readers and voters over at cagematch.net, It got an 8.83 out of 10. John, people absolutely loved this. And what's interesting is I feel like a lot of times when we hear a stipulation like a falls count anywhere match, that a lot of the hardcore quote unquote work rate fan base, they poo poo on it. They want to see a lot of high spots. They want to see spectacular stunts in the ring. And when you hear falls count anywhere match, you think, oh, that's going to be a bunch of walking and talking and brawling. But these guys pulled it off. I know you've spent a little bit of time with both of these guys. Mike Santana and Mustafa Ali maybe stole the show. What'd you think?
I think sometimes when you give guys an opportunity and they take the opportunity, it does something different for their career trajectory. And I've always thought these two guys can work. Santana can work and he is over. Mustafa can work and he is over. These guys are good workers. TNA has got some really good workers. The Nemeth brothers, Dolph is fantastic. Nick, I guess he goes by, but I think they're incredible. And the Hardys are as over now as they've been for the last 30 years. Kazarian, incredible worker, great talker. They have got some incredible workers. Masha, their champion, Tessa. I mean, literally, they are deep in talent. And when you see something like this, you hope these guys step up because they have the talent. And when they do, it just makes you proud of the business, of them, of everything, because you know how important it is to their career.
I absolutely love the main event story, but before we get there, I want to talk about the tag match. You mentioned it. Nick and Ryan are the new tag champs. The Nemeth brothers beat the Hardy brothers. I can't say that I necessarily saw this happening. Super pumped for Nick and Ryan. But anytime you can pick up a win over the Hardys, I don't care if it's their first act, their second act, or their final act. That's a big damn deal, isn't it, John?
I've never seen anything like the Hardys. I mean, I've never seen like the Hardys that were so over, say, 30 years ago or almost 30 years ago when they came in. They won their first title from me and Ron in their hometown. And now they are almost 30 years later, and they're more over now than they were then. That is just unheard of. The run they're on, to me, is absolutely incredible. It's just – I don't know how to explain it. I was sitting there with Ron a couple weeks ago at an appearance, and their line was out of the room, down the hall, down another hall, and cut off. And we're like, how these kids are just kids. They're 50 years old. They're when their kids when came in, but they're unbelievable. And me and Ron were just sitting there. We're incredibly happy for them because they're wonderful people and they deserve every bit of it. But it's an incredible run they're on. And Ryan and Nick, that is a great team. That Ryan Nemeth is talented. Now, Nick, everybody knows how talented Nick is. I've never seen him have a bad match. But that Ryan Nemeth is talented. This is going to be a fun tag team. That tag team you want spotlighted on global television everywhere, not just in the ring, because in the ring, they're great. Outside the ring, they're out of this world.
The main event, Joe Hendry. Do you believe? Well, he believes that he's still the champion. He retains over Ethan Page and Frankie Kazarian. And then we saw a little run-in afterwards from Trick Williams from NXT. This is a big opportunity for Trick. It's a big opportunity for TNA. I mean, it's one thing to have Ethan Page in the main event, but now here comes another WWE talent. What'd you make of this? What's next for Joe Hendry, John?
It makes sense to me. You got to have something for the UBS show coming up, in about 10 weeks, whatever it is, when they're going to have another big arena show. And you can use the power of NXT and Trick Williams, who has a big following, but more specifically, the power of NXT to promote this show. I'll bet we'll see some more crossover because that's a big deal to go up there to the UBS arena up in New York and want to put a ton of people in that building. I thought this made perfect sense for that.
I wanted to ask you, and this is a silly question, but I think everyone who watched the pay-per-view was thrilled. I've not heard from any of my wrestling buddies who watch TNA who were saying anything other than this is as good as it's been as long as they can remember. And you take a look at the house they drew this past weekend, and man, it was phenomenal. And I feel like if anyone else besides WWE or AEW were putting on these quality shows and drawing these kinds of crowds, they'd be getting a much more favorable response. And one of my favorite follows on Twitter, Andrew Dice Clay, actually said something like that. I wanted to share the tweet with you. He said, TNA is this weird thing in pro wrestling where they can be selling out buildings regularly and still nobody gives a fuck. Weirdest promotion there's ever been. if any other non-WWE, AEW promotion drew a house like they did last night, it would be mega news. I agree with that. Why do you think that is? And is there anything TNA can do to overcome that? I think that's fascinating that we all agree they've got great talent. They put on great matches. The presentation is good. The production is good. The houses are full. I mean, they're drawing great crowds. I know it wasn't sold out, but I mean, technically it was sold out, but they weren't at full capacity. But it was a very healthy crowd. It just feels like nobody's talking about it, and I can't figure out why.
Yeah, it's strange. And Tommy Dreamer and the whole creative team there does an incredible job. They do a great job booking episodic television and these talent in places where they can succeed, which is also very important when you're booking. I saw one of their pay-per-views down in San Antonio when Dave Silva set the airport on fire to try to burn me up and kill me. That it was one of the best pay-per-views I've seen in a long time. I mean, they're putting on incredible matches. I don't know if it's the old baggage from TNA, 10, 15 years ago I don't mean baggage of any booking mistakes or anything like that. Just it's a secondary promotion. No matter what, it's still a secondary promotion behind WWE because WWE is so big, but it's doing great. I think what gets them out of being considered an independent, or however you want to characterize it, as less than a full standalone wrestling organization, is a TV contract. And I think they'll get one. I don't have any inside information on this, but WWE has left a huge void by going to streaming, and terrestrial TV needs live television. That's what draws all the money. And there's nothing better than a weekly wrestling show. That's why wrestling has been big on television since they first started calling them Georgie sets, because Gorgeous George sold so many sets when TV was first created. It's the same now. I think they'll get a TV contract. I hope they do. And when they do, I think that's when you start considering them different than just TNA, who's doing really well. The old pat on the head. You guys are doing well over there. Now all of a sudden I think they're going to start looking at them like, holy shit, that's a real standalone wrestling company now.
Polaris Castillo says, I was there in person last night. Trick Williams coming in was shocking. I was there live yesterday. Joe Hendry defending was phenomenal. I was there yesterday. The Hardys losing was upsetting. It feels like Polaris had a great time. He says, I was there at TNA Rebellion. The crowd was savage. I encourage everybody listening to this, if you have an opportunity to go to a TNA show, you should go. Even if you haven't been regularly watching the program. I was fortunate enough to see one of their shows a couple of years ago in Louisville in person. I was blown away with it. My dad hadn't seen a TNA show in over 20 years. He loved it as well. It is a great time. And I think they might be one of, if not the most fan-friendly organization around. Don't you think?
100%. They do these meet and greets afterwards, which is another way to actually give guys a different payday, which is really smart. But they'll have these meet and greets after. The Hardys will sit there for hours and sign autographs. I mean, the Hardys will look. Me and Ron, because we have the same guy who books us on the appearance autograph stuff, WrestleCons and things like that. We sit by the Hardys a lot. Those guys will stay there until every single autograph is signed. I don't care how late it is at night. It is remarkable how good they are. And when they're at TNA, they do the same thing. They will stay there for 2 or 3 hours after to sign all the autographs. I mean, that's fan friendly. When you go to these shows, you really get a good perspective of professional wrestling.
That's a little different, bud. I want to talk to you about some other.
We do have gun mugs, though.
Oh, there you go. But you didn't get that at the Oklahoma gift shop, did you?
No. I got to tell you, I've been signed up for an Oklahoma newsletter. I get an Oklahoma news every single morning. So they tell me about like the new meth labs that have been created, the bingo parlors that have specials and shit like that. And somebody, I think named Gerald Briscoe, signed me up for Oklahoma Daily News. So every day I get on my iPad Oklahoma news. It sucks. I'm not saying the news sucks. Oklahoma sucks. There's nothing new about that. It sucks since the beginning. We should give them like to, I don't know, India. Ask Jinder Mahal if they want Oklahoma.
That would actually be great. If our president really is trying to land Greenland, maybe we could just do an Oklahoma trade.
Oh my God, that'd be awesome. Give Oklahoma to like somebody like it doesn't matter who, Brazil.
Let's see.
And we'll take Greenland and get the Arctic Passage and all the minerals that are in Greenland and all that stuff, and we'll give Oklahoma and everybody that's there, They'd have to teach them how to read because nobody can read that's there. And anybody who has a car has already left. So there's no cars there. But
That's
they would
it. I mean, listen, let's be real. I think most people listening to this, I know when you think of Oklahoma, you think of Mr. Briscoe, but I think most of our listeners today, when they think of Oklahoma, they think of JR. And I have it on good authority. As soon as he got his driver's license back, he drove his ass straight to Jacksonville Beach, and he ain't been back yet.
Exactly. You know, it's funny how the Briscoe and JR, they all talk about Oklahoma, but they left as soon as they could. They left.
Yes, went straight to Florida.
He's down there with Tiger King, the woman that apparently had her husband eaten by the tiger. What's her name? Baskin.
Oh, Carol Baskin, yeah.
Yeah, Gerald Briscoe lives right near here. You know, he used to be near Tiger King, who looks like Michael Hayes' meth-addicted son, moonwalking into prison and wrestling tigers. But now he moved down near Carol Baskin, who I think, from what I hear, was an old rat in the Leroy McGirt territory. Don't know that for sure.
Well, I mean, Tiger King is in prison in Florida. Did you know that?
I didn't know he was in Florida. I thought he was in Fort Worth. Is he in Florida?
I mean, he writes about it like he's in the Pensacola prison system. I mean, I wish it wasn't Pensacola, but I've seen it in Pensacola. Hey, some other things I've seen I wanted to bring up to you because we talked about it and touched on it last week, and obviously I'm sure you've been hit with this a bunch. WWE has acquired AAA. And Conan went on his fabulous podcast, Keeping It 100. And I do enjoy listening to JoJo and Conan, and I love busting Disco's balls. So sign me up for that. But they addressed it.
Everybody does, apparently. I don't know Disco, but everybody, I have no feeling one way or the other. But it seems like people really enjoy busting his balls.
You would love him in real life because he is a ball buster just like you and I. But sometimes people don't understand that he is intentionally trying to poke you with a stick and get you riled up. And when you give him a reaction, it's encouraging him to do more.
I like it.
Yes, I know that you and him would cut from the same cloth. You guys will have a lot in common. You just don't know it. So listen, it was written about that Jeremy Borash is going to head up this AAA acquisition, at least from a WWE side of things. And, of course, Conan is somebody that has worked with Borash both in WCW and then again later in TNA. And Conan was asked about this, and he says, talking about Jeremy, he's a creative genius, no doubt about it. And there's nothing more fun, as you know, than wrestling against your friends or working with your friends, right? He's a good friend, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And Conan would also stress that AAA is now under WWE's umbrella, so the production quality of the broadcast will improve. Specifically, Conan said, our problem in AAA isn't our talent, it isn't our booking, it's that we don't have any money. So, for example, they said in WWE that if you put all of our TVs together for 1 year, it's not as much as they spend on one TV in the United States. Our show will look a lot better, and we're going to be able to work with their talent, not just NXT talent. And now with money, you'll see what we can do. And, of course, there was some speculation that Disco said, well, maybe next year at Triple Mania, you could have Dom Mysterio defending the Mega Championship against El Grande Americano. And I think Disco was saying that sort of tongue-in-cheek. And Conan says, we kind of already talked about that. They will both be involved, but I don't think that will be the match. And Conan would go on to say the reason Dorian Roldan sold the company was not that AAA was at the risk of going out of business, but that Dorian recognized that was the path to growth. Specifically, bro, the reason they sold the company is not because we were going out of business. The reason they sold the company is because Dorian Roldan put his ego to the side, and he understood we could never grow if we didn't have help and capital, and now we have it. But business is not bad. The last 2 years, all of our TVs have been from 85% to full, right? Our business is not bad. And when he was asked if this purchase would make AAA more accessible to English-speaking fans outside of Mexico, Conan said that was 1,000% correct. He says, let me tell you, bro, for all the haters that were out there throwing shade at me this weekend, bro, what happened? You can't stop it. And what's going to happen? You can't stop that either. And the only thing we're going to give you is a much better finished product. And that benefits everybody and more work to a lot of people and more work to other Latinos that a lot of people complain and say they aren't being used correctly. Well, now they will. I'm fascinated by this, John. You spent a little bit of time in AAA. I know you've come to have a great relationship with Conan, as I understand it. What do you make of some of these details that Conan is sharing with the world behind the scenes of AAA?
I think what he said is the most important thing. They're not going out of business. Their business has been fantastic. Every show I've been down to, from Guadalajara to Mexico City, has been sold out. They're doing good business. They're just not running that much. They need capital. They had an investment that happened a couple years ago that took away some of their capital that didn't work out. That was in Cancun. And because of that, they don't have the capital to expand. And so this was just something that was needed. I think Conan has done an incredible job. He was trained. He was under the tutelage of Kevin Sullivan, one of the greatest bookers of all time. Conan does an incredible job down there. And Jeremy Borash, I've never gotten to work with Jeremy close. Everybody who knows him talks about how great he is. I think this is going to be a terrific team that's going to start up down there. And it's always been, look, since the 96, was it the Royal Rumble, or 97 Royal Rumble down the Alamo Dome, when it was Sid versus Shawn, and we were trying to bring all the luchadors and get some presence there. We've just never done a good job at it. It's about WWE has never done a good job of it. I think they're going to do an excellent job with it now. It's going to, the hard thing to do when you make an integration like this, and most of WWE's acquisitions, by the way, of either Lucha stuff or ECW, WCW has gone horribly. And a lot of that is because of a man I love. That's Vince McMahon. Georgia Championship Wrestling went horribly too when he bought it from the Briscoes. He wanted to put his ideas into there. That worked when you're building it out of New York and you're building this global company that Vince McMahon did build. But it doesn't work when you're going into a regional territory that wants their cultural and heritage intact. And this is especially true down in Mexico. They want what they grew up with intact. Now, they don't mind a little bit of Americanization of it. They don't certainly mind their luchadors learning English, which they should. Just like most of the money is going to be in the United States. People know that. People in AAA, they don't make much money off the television. They make money off sponsorships. The real money, you look at European rugby. You can't make any money over there, even though you're selling out decent sized arenas because of TV contracts. You can in the United States. This is where everybody wants to come. So these guys do need to learn English, and none of that's going to harm the product. It's just an addition to the product. The Americans that work down there need to learn Spanish out of respect of the culture that they're part of. It works both ways. It's not a matter of, hey, you got to learn English. I don't give a shit if you learn English. Learn the language of the country you're working in Mexico, learn Spanish. When you're looking in the United States, learn English. It's very simple. When I was in Europe, I learned German so I could talk to the German people. It's just a matter of respect. I think that what we're doing with this is going to open up television contracts, especially in Southwest United States. And again, WWE has left a huge void by going to streaming, leaving the terrestrial stations. They've been wanting to crack this nut forever. There's a guy down right now that is promoting on the border. He's doing 2,000 or 3,000 people a show down there. It's huge. Nobody even knows about this stuff hardly. It's just kind of underneath the radar screen. You could run all of that forever. You're going to open up a territory probably 3 times as big and probably 20 times as lucrative with this partnership that's being done with AAA. And I think Conan and Dorian, by the way, I have a lot of respect for Dorian, both. Are the right guys to run it. Conan is a really smart guy. When I talk to him about long-term booking, man, it's just refreshing to talk to him. He's that good, in my opinion.
I'm a big Conan fan. I'm a big Dorian fan. I know that some of our listeners aren't familiar, but Dorian had a great idea, like Cirque du Soleil, the Lucha version, that was going to have music and stories, and it was like a dinner theater type thing. Think like a Vegas strip show. And he built this in like the most high-end, fabulous mall in Cancun. And he tried it, and for whatever reason, it just wasn't the right marketing strategy or it wasn't the right timing. But I feel like WWE, with all of their Vegas connections, that's going to happen, is it not? I mean, what a great idea it was.
Yes, Dorian had a terrific idea. The timing may have been bad on it, whatever it was. Shit happens. Look, sometimes because Vince McMahon had a lot of good ideas, and a lot of them didn't work. That happens in life. When you're willing to roll the dice, like a guy like Dorian is, and I have a lot of respect for that, just like Vince, you'll have ideas that don't work. And when you do, you stick that in the bag. Sometimes that's just as valuable as ideas that do work, because you figure out what you don't need to do or stay away from, and you go a different direction. And you got to cut it off. You got to have not such a big ego that you're saying, I'm staying with this because I did it. It's day one thinking, as Vince would say. You got to cut it off and say, okay, where does my money best go forward? I think WWE will do something like this, not to mention all the incredible merchandise.
Yes.
Every one of these lucha guys has an incredibly charismatic, colorful outfit and mask. Fans know them by their mask. They're going to sell these things like freaking hotcakes. I mean, the merchandise, that's the reason WWE wanted to get in the lucha market forever, was the merchandise. Look at what Rey Mysterio has done. I mean, he's the exception. He's probably the greatest luchador of all time, but look what he's done with merchandise. That's exactly what they're going to do down there. I think this is a very lucrative partnership for both sides, and I'm very excited to see it because of the principles involved. I think Dorian and Conan are going to do a fantastic job down there.
It's going to be exciting to see what they're doing next. I can't wait to see what this partnership looks like. I do want to talk about what that means for the other promotion, because you actually wrestled in Arena Mexico before, right?
Yes.
So that's
but for AAA, not for
CMLL, you mean?
No, I was only in Arena Mexico in Mexico City for AAA. I wrestled up north for Elizondo. I worked with CMLL guys, but I only worked up north. I didn't work Mexico City back in the early 90s.
Well,
Elizondo wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let me. He kind of, they'd block you from going places back then. That's what, Chris Jericho would talk about, where they wouldn't give you work papers. They never gave me work papers, so I couldn't go down to Mexico City to work because they would have told on me. That way they kept me there. They kind of kept me hostage in northern Mexico. But that's the reason I didn't go down there, was because Elizondo blocked me from going down to Mexico City, which was, I say blocked me. It's kind of shitty, but it's what everybody did. It was just business, and he did use me a ton down there, and he paid me well. So it wasn't like, it was a lot of animosity. I was fine, but that's why I didn't work down there.
I bring that up because I don't know that you saw, but AEW announced that they were actually going to be running Arena Mexico with CMLL in June, and it's already sold out. Are you surprised by that?
No, because they're selling out in Mexico City. That both groups are. I was at Triple Mania last year, and they were sold out there when it had Del Rio and Dolph, I guess, with the main event. Nick, they sell out in Mexico City. I mean, they do incredibly well. Both groups do incredibly well there. So no, I wasn't surprised at all. I was happy for them. I think that's good for them, and I'm sure they'll have a hell of a show. There's some great talent with CMLL as well.
Have you seen the way CMLL has started advertising immediately after WWE announced the AAA acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because this is a tough thing for them. I mean, they got a lot of money coming down there. I mean, they did not have CMLL would run a lot of shows. AAA was not running a lot of shows. They're running TV shows. So they're making money off the sponsorships, mainly off the TV shows. So you look at how their TV was done, you'd see behind the green screen, not the green screen, the big Titantron behind it.
Scrolling sponsors.
Yeah, you see scrolling sponsors behind the match. They were making money off sponsorships. They weren't running a ton of shows. CMLL was running a ton of shows. That's now going to be in jeopardy, because you got a pretty formidable competitor with a ton of money coming in, that I don't know if they want to run a ton of shows or not, but they might. And if they do, they're probably going to send down a lot of WWE talent to be integrated with AAA, just as you're going to see some talent come back from them to America to bring the lucha style and the lucha characters in, and the Mexican flavor in. So yeah, it's a real threat to CMLL. They're going to have to step up their game, but that's what they're doing. They're a great old wrestling promotion. This ain't their first rodeo. These guys are used to fighting for survival. These guys don't really like each other, from what I understand. They butt heads, and talent switches over back and forth. But it's a tough competition down there. And I think they're going to be fine.
Oh, there's no doubt. What I was getting at is, immediately after the WWE announced the acquisition, they started promoting themselves as 100% Mexican. I mean, listen, this is the modern. I know a lot of our fans here in America don't keep up with it, but the closest thing we've got to the Monday Night Wars is happening with AAA and CMLL. Yeah. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. I'm fascinated by this. We know Mark Shapiro came out and pretty pointedly said, we're not going to do a lot of house shows in WWE. We don't see the upside in that. We know that Vince saw value in servicing those B and C markets. We do not. It'll be interesting to see how this changes wrestling in Mexico and abroad, because there's a lot of moving parts. This is a big story, but what everybody wants to know is what Mick Mac is asking. Will we see El Grande Americano and Vampiro Americano. Hook it up.
You won't see Vampiro Americano. But, hey, by the way, we've got Vampiro, the original Vampiro, on Stories of Briscoe and Bradshaw this week. I think it'll drop next week. So I'm very excited about that. What an incredible star, man. I love that guy. But you're not going to – I don't think you'll see Vampiro Americano. You may see John Layfield or JBL down there, and you may see El Grande Americano down there. I know. I don't know that for sure. I'm not speaking from inside information, so I don't want people to think I'm giving away something. But I would imagine that he goes down there, and I would think that I will be down there as well. And by the way, CMLL, I'm not throwing shade at him. I don't know him. I wish him all the best. But if you're going to only Mexican, wear your heels. You know, it's so easy just to get a freaking Texan or American to.
Hang on, I don't think they mean that. I think they mean ownership. I think it's a shot at, hey, now it's.
Oh, I got you. I misunderstood. I misunderstood.
I'm saying, like, when I had Andrade over at the house once, and I had Dave Silva over at the house. Of course, Andrade pulls the big tequila bottle out, and it's time for everybody to do some drinking. And very quickly, Andrade, well, Silva, you're with us. What was the phrase he used to describe you?
He said that I was a Mexican made in China.
So you're like a Timu Mexican.
I'm a Timu Mexican.
The idea being, Dave's born and raised in Texas. He's probably been to Mexico before, but he's not like a Mexican citizen. So I do feel like in the culture, that is going to be a thing with who's the ownership group, like, hey, we're 100%. It's not like 50% Dorian, 50% WWE. I think that's the idea. Like, sometimes when a business gets bought, John, they'll promote under new management, under new ownership, whatever. Like, hey, come try us again. Well, I think the idea they're doubling down is, hey, we're still us. We're going to do Lucha the way you. I think that's pretty smart the way they're marketing it, but we'll see.
I think it's pretty smart, but I also can see the other side when the Chicago Cubs are playing the Los Angeles Dodgers. Say, hey, all our players are from America. Well, sorry, Ohtani's not. And he's still the best player in baseball, and he fills up arenas. So, to me, it's all about talent, and I get that. Like, if I'm them, I do the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if it works or not because people are going to go to where they were entertained.
I want to give a shout out to Michael, who says, I've been a long-time listener. When Bruce started his hiatus, I stopped listening. Last week, I listened to the WrestleMania reaction episode, and now I'm back and catching up on STW. JBL surprised me. I love it. John, you've been making a lot of appearances. Are people surprised they don't hate you as much as they thought they would because they've been listening to the show?
I think I'm skewed in as far as response because I don't think people would tell me in person. I don't think they'd probably waste the time if they hated me to, like stand in line and say, by the way, I hate you. So I don't think I'm getting the negative feedback that's probably out there. I'm just getting only the positive feedback, but it's been 100% positive. But again, because I think it's skewed, I think if people come to see me and have to wait, in line or have to wait a little bit to, make an effort to come see me, most of them wouldn't come over there to say, by the way, you suck and I hate you and I hope you die. So I'm not getting any of that. I actually am just getting the really enjoying you on the show and you surprise me, which kind of worries me because if I'm surprising people had a really low image of me.
Well, here's what happened. You went on TV and were an asshole so long. You did a really good job at your job.
I forgot about that. Yes, I did.
Yes,
I did.
You were easy to hate. Mikey G says, what's up, guys? I think this is good for business. He's talking about AAA and WWE. I think so, too. I've got a theory on that I want to talk about with you next week, John. Maybe we'll talk about it off air because I'm just throwing darts in the dark, but I think I nailed something that, as a business guy, you'll be into. We do have John for a few more minutes, though. If you guys got some questions for us, we're going to shut it down at the top of the hour because that's when Monday Night Raw is going to start on Netflix.
Conrad, I want to bring some. I talked about it a little bit last week when I talked about WrestleMania. I always thought I didn't articulate it very well. When we first started wrestling, this is complete non sequitur, kind of going to the wrestling business. When we first got started the business, and talking about promos, you would have somebody say, okay, you got Ricky and Robert next week in Charlotte. You're in a lumberjack match. Give me 2 minutes, go. And you do your promo. Or you go in the ring, same thing. Then you started getting bullet points. Then you started getting full scripts. Now, all that matters is it good or not? I'm not saying one is good better than the other. Ad-libbing or going through by a complete script is good or another. That's how matches have progressed. I just realized that at WrestleMania. That's why you have these magnificent spots and the magnificent things that are going on, because, when you first went out there, years ago, you'd say, okay, you're over Black Bart. Give me 15 minutes. Do a fuck finish. Okay, done. That's all they'd say. Then they came bullet points. Now it's all scripted for a lot of guys. Neither one's good or bad, but I think that's the difference in wrestling now. And I think that's why you have some of these people that have not been into wrestling very long, but you got such good agents and such a good machine behind them that you make them do incredible things for 20 to 30 minutes. And it's not that one is better or one is wrong and one is right. If they work, they're both right. But it's just interesting to me that that's kind of the progression that you've seen in wrestling.
It is interesting. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. We've got a few questions we want to hit here. Alex says, John, why don't you think we ever saw Stevie Ray in WWE? Do you have any Stevie stories? I feel like he's often forgotten about, unfortunately. I agree. We know Booker T became a much bigger star in the confines of WWE than he was in WCW. Not to say he wasn't a star there, but he became a bigger breakout star as a singles in WWE. I'm talking about globally. But still, the Harlem Heat, the most decorated tag team in WCW history. They've won the belts more than anybody else. Why don't you think we saw Stevie in
I've
WWE?
always wondered that. I really like Stevie. And I liked him from the first moment I met him in Dallas, just like Booker. Booker and I traveled a lot more together because we went to Japan together and Korea together and did a lot more things together than me and Stevie. But Stevie was huge. I mean, huge. He had these massive freaking arms and could talk. Stevie could work also. I mean, he had everything. And I always thought when we got Booker, I always figured Stevie would come. I don't know why he didn't. I never heard a reason. I never heard any negative thing about him. Everybody I've ever known him likes him. I certainly like him. I always thought he would be there. I always thought he would end up, we'd end up somewhere together. When I first got into Dallas, everybody knew that they were evidently experienced in Booker and Stevie. We knew they were the next ones to go. And they were going to go big. We knew they were. They were drawing money in redneck arenas. I mean, it was pretty impressive what they were doing. They were the few guys that drew money. And I always thought they would both end up somewhere. They're obviously one of the greatest tag teams of all time based upon their records and all that. But I always thought Steve would end up in WWE, and I don't know why he didn't.
Instagram a wrestling historian says, what if JBL defeated John Cena at WrestleMania 21? So instead of him becoming the man and winning his first world title, what if they did the Cody and they said, nope, not this year, kid. You got to overcome and slay some more dragons. We'll see you next year. Could that have worked, do you think? Or did they get it right?
I think they got it right. You look at history, they got it right. Cena's a 17-time world champion, a movie star, and just this incredible person. You're going into the PG era of WWE, and that would have been tough for me. It'd been tough for anybody. Cena had the hardest role of any champion, I believe, in wrestling history, to go from the Attitude Era where you can flip off your balls, drink beer on television, women are flashing, beautiful women are flashing themselves, and you had all kinds of crazy, crazy stuff going on in the show, to a G-rated era. Very few people could have done that. I don't know if anybody could have done that except for Cena. So, yeah, it definitely was the right thing. But if it had gone another year, he'd still be a 17-time world champion. You'd have to compress him a little more. He's still going to be the guy.
Well, no doubt about that. Last one, Alex wants to know, underrated match, JBL with Orlando versus Booker T at Survivor Series 04. Hard-hitting match with two grown men beating the hell out of each other. Do you think that's a sleeper match of yours?
I do. Yeah. And I was so excited about that because I love Booker. Booker's one of my best friends and always has been. I love Booker and Charmel. And so I got to work with Booker. I got to work with Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer. We were taking the bookend on the floor. That didn't feel very good, but it was great. Booker could be stiff now. I want to tell you, Booker could be stiff, but he took it the same way. Booker just loved to play rough. He's a super tough guy, as is well documented. But it was fun out there with him. It didn't, you could hit him as hard as you want. He didn't care. He's going to hit you back, but you felt like you did something. I was very excited when I got to wrestle Booker in a championship match. That was really cool to me. I think my career would have been missing if I hadn't got to have such a big match like that with Booker T, because Booker T's he means that much to me.
John, we're in overtime. Can't believe it, but Monday Night Raw is about to be live on Netflix. We were planning to talk about Vader. Can we promise that we're going to talk about Vader next week here on the show? Let's do it.
You know, Big is always called him Vader's son. You know, Big Leon Gabork. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. When I first walked in, Kevin Dunn says, "Look," and I just looked over and go, "It's time! It's time!" And I've said that to him for like 25 years since. Which Big's a wonderful guy, Leon Gabork. What a good dude. But I've had a lot of fun calling. And when I see him now, he'll do the Vader when I see him. So
I love that.
He takes it very well. He's a good guy.
We'll be talking about Vader, the good, the bad, and the ugly next week here on the program. I can't wait. He's one of my favorites, and he's on deck right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.